has won 9 straight, the Big 12 title, and are ranked 7th in the nation. 14th ranked Auburn awaits. The All-State Sugar Bowl, Monday, January 2nd at 8:30 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
This is The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio or on the ESPN app.
And happy holidays to everyone out there. It is The Right Time on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app. Bomani is off again today, enjoying a nice long holiday weekend. Jeff Dickerson and Jonathan Hood. Dickerson and Hood filling in. We are presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on this show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. I was expecting more from the Giants last night, weren't you? We spent a good chunk of the show yesterday previewing New York and Philadelphia, and our good friend Jordan Renan, who covers the Giants for ESPN, Jonathan, was on from the link, and he himself said that people in New York feel pretty confident about the Giants having some staying power in the playoffs this year. But after watching Eli play last night, he hasn't been good all year. But last night, to throw the ball 63 times, have 3 picks and only 365 passing yards, I don't know, man. I mean, they're going to the postseason, obviously, but whether or not they can win a game, I don't feel too good about that.
No, I think that when you look at the contenders, like the Dallas Cowboys, like the New England Patriots, when we start seeing these teams, we try to figure out what they are. When you think about New York Giants football, Jeff, you don't know what they are. If you're not clearly defined on exactly what you are as a football team, then I can't consider you a contender. We see the one-loss record coming in. Coming in, they were 10-4. But yet we still didn't know exactly what they were. We asked Jordan Renan on NFL Nation every weekend, what are the Giants? Why are they this good? He couldn't give an answer until recently, saying that the defense came to play. Still, after last night's game, I don't know why they're right now 10-5. It's not clearly defined if they're strong offensively because of Eli Manning or the running game. I don't know if it's because of the defense. All I know is that it's a team that does have a winning record, but not necessarily a strong playoff contender.
Yeah, they've had some good games this year, and you don't overreact, good or bad, on one performance. But, Philadelphia had really nothing to play for last night. Carson Wentz did not play all that well. He's still making a lot of mistakes. He had that great start to the season. I saw him live in person week 2, and he was terrific. But the league figures you out as a young quarterback. Basically, all young quarterbacks go through this. There's kind of a downward little spiral here. He'll get himself right, I'm sure, next season. But he wasn't sharp last night. But the Giants and the turnovers kept handing it back over to Philadelphia. And I'm telling you this, too. Watching some of those Eli passes, Jonathan, weren't there times last night when you're screaming at the TV, throw the ball, Eli?
Yeah.
He's got guys open down the field, and for whatever reason, he's floating the football and giving those Eagles defensive backs a chance to make plays.
You know who he looked like last night? Peyton Manning toward the end. So, I'm just saying, you could tell that Eli's in the autumn of his career, can't you? You're 38 for 63, good for 356 yards, but yet you turn the ball over 3 times. You could just tell that any fortune from the Giants comes from some semblance of a running game or a defense, because to me, Eli Manning is, at this point in time in his career, is not going to be the reason why that the Giants are going to be able to get to a certain level. I just think that he's just there managing the game, and that's okay if you don't turn the ball over, but he looked like Peyton toward the end, which tells me that Eli doesn't have a lot of great games left in him.
It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. 2 best teams in the NFC, obviously Dallas and Seattle. Mm-hmm. If you ask me right now, I'd be way more afraid to play Seattle than I would the Cowboys, as much as I want to wrap my arms around Dallas this year. And they do have a ton of star power. They've got a ton of skill position players. Dak Prescott's been an amazing story. Ezekiel Elliott, of course, Des Bryant, Jason Witten, a great offensive line. Do you trust the Cowboys? I need to see some postseason wins from them before I really trust them. So between Dallas or Seattle, right now, because of their pedigree and their history, I would lean towards Seattle. But my point is, there's no New England in the NFC.
Right.
So if the Giants should be in a position, given their record, to strongly challenge for a playoff win or two. And maybe it still happens, but and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel good about this team going into the postseason. I feel like the whole year it's been impressive. They've won as many games. But like you said, I don't know what they are. I can't point to more than just one or two strong strengths on defense, because the offense with that line and with the lack of a running game and with the shaky veteran quarterback, I'm just not sure what they really are. I mean, they are a 10-win team, but are they good enough to get a victory in the postseason? I'm just not buying it right now.
I will buy into the Dallas Cowboys, and I will not be enamored by the 12-2 record. But what I will look at is a running game. Because even in 2016, Jeff, the running game still is important. Last game that Elliott played as a running back for the Cowboys, 23 carries, good for 159 yards and a touchdown. I trust Ezekiel Elliott running the football. So that's a weapon. That Dez Bryant is a weapon. That Jason Witten is a weapon. And also the other parts of that offense can be able to help Dak Prescott. Maybe it's because you just don't think that Dak Prescott is ready for this situation, not ready for this level. But I kind of think that if he doesn't turn the ball over and he's just being able to just manage the game and allow his weapons to get it done, I can believe in the Cowboys. I can believe in that offensive line, giving them time to be able to get it down the field or make that offense work. And I think you're right. Defensively, they have several guys they can go to. But you know what? In the playoffs, for as good as the Cowboys are, that's good enough. I'll tell you this, is that the actual parallel to the Giants would be the Lions, in that I don't believe in anything that the Lions are doing. That's all smoke and mirrors. And then, that's more of the parallel I see. I think the Cowboys head and shoulders above everyone else because of what the weapons that they have. They've proven this year that they can be viable weapons, and that's only going to help the Cowboys.
It's not that I don't believe in Dak Prescott. I'm a big Dak Prescott fan. I mean, I think he's a great story as a mid-round draft pick, doing what he's doing this year because of all the injuries they had in the preseason to Romo and the other backups. There's just something about Dallas. They're a fascinating team. They're a fascinating team.
Right.
Because there's always drama. But there's been so much good stuff this year. I'm waiting for the bad stuff to happen.
Oh, come on, man. This is not your dad's Cowboys, though. It's different. And I know that, again, we're used to the bottom dropping out, but it won't happen this year because Romo's not starting. Now, that's the whole key. You're looking for, like, the Romo nonsense or the Romo bad game or something else. I just think that bad luck has gone out the window because the team has turned things around. It's not surrounded just on Romo's ability to get the ball down the field and win games for them. Now it's more of a group effort. Running the football, weapons around Elliott and Prescott. That's why I think it's a little bit different this year than years past.
Could Jerry Jones be this good to pick all these players and build this team? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, and again, they're a fabulous story this year. Mm-hmm. But there's always something about the Cowboys I just can't entirely trust. And I haven't trusted since their dynasty ended in the mid-1990s. There's just always something. They always find a way to follow up what is a great situation.
Okay. I know what you're looking for. Here's what you're going to see. In that playoffs, right before the guys are introduced, you're going to see Jerry Jones come to the star, get the old microphone out and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Romo." And then Romo's going to start. That's what you want. You want some kind of wrestling villain nonsense to happen in Dallas for that first game. Dak Prescott's been so good. And now all of a sudden, through the blue curtain, here comes Tony Romo. And there he is with his 3 interceptions and the loss for the Cowboys in the first round. Well, that's not happening anymore. Jerry Jones turned babyface now. You're looking for heel Jones to throw salt in the opponent's eyes and mess it up. That's not happening. It's a different Dallas Cowboys, I'm telling you.
I don't buy it. Once a heel, always a heel. I don't buy it.
It's different.
They'll be showing the highlights before the game. And here's the Cowboys starting quarterback wearing a wrestling mask for some reason during pregame warm-ups. And then at the coin toss, he rips the mask off, and it's Romo at the star.
It's just, well, that's not going to happen. No, Prescott, we just thought it would be best for Dak to sit out this playoff game to see what Tony can do, and we feel good about Tony Romo, Los Angeles. So now he's going to bring him out, and then Romo starts. No, I'm hoping that there won't be any chicanery, any nonsense, that it'll just be Prescott and there won't be any controversy. I know you're used to the controversy and the salt in the eyes and the brass knucks out of the trunks from Jerry Jones, but this is going to be straight and narrow. They will at least win a playoff game, at least a playoff game, Jeff. I'm telling you.
Really like Ezekiel Elliott and what he's done this year, but I just feel like Felix Jones gave us the best chance.
Wait a minute.
Back.
I really think that Lucky Whitehead should be starting. Wait a minute.
Something about them Arkansas Razorbacks I just can't get over. All right, Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable networks. It sure seems like Rex Ryan's on his way out in Buffalo. Does not get a vote of confidence from his GM. We'll give you that story coming up next. It's Dickerson and Hood in for Bomani. It's the right time on ESPN Radio.
Cowboy.
The Cowboys have clinched the 1 seed in the NFC and don't face a game that matters until the weekend of January 14th. Will we see Tony Romo? The latest from the NFL Monday morning on Mike and Mike, 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
Dickerson and Hood and for Bomani, the right time on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Feel free to tweet us throughout the show, our 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed. Jonathan is at TweetJHood. I am at Dickerson ESPN. We are at ESPN Radio. Really nice schedule of games, Jonathan. Tomorrow and then Sunday you've got Ravens and Steelers and Lions and Cowboys on Monday night.
Well, of course, the NFL deathly afraid of the NBA. That's why they move most of their games to Saturday. I can understand that, the mighty NBA rolling through and the NFL and Goodell scared to death to take on the mighty NBA on Christmas Day. But I can understand. I can watch some games on Saturday. Sure, why not?
I just feel like NBA basketball on Christmas Day is a tradition. And maybe it's because you and I are from Chicago, and growing up, the Bulls were always on Christmas Day.
Yeah. Every
year with Michael and Scotty and everyone. So for us, it was so natural to see the NBA on Christmas. But yeah, I mean, they've moved the schedule around. There is a good game Sunday, though, afternoon. Ravens and Steelers. That's a big one in that division. Also tomorrow, you've got one team playing where their coach might be coach of the year. And the team they're playing against, their coach might be out of a job. That's the Dolphins and Adam Gase against Rex Ryan and the Buffalo Bills. We've talked about the Bills a lot on our shows. The record is not horrible for Rex in Buffalo. I think the problem is, Jonathan, he's so loud that he raised expectations to a point where he could never reach. That's the problem, is that when you go in there talking Super Bowl, talking about upending New England, that's not reality right now. The Patriots one day will slide back down to the pack. That day will be when Tom Brady leaves and Bill Belichick retires. Until then, they're always going to be the perennial front runner. So, again, I feel like if expectations were a little more tempered for Rex, he wouldn't be in this position. But it certainly sounds like he's on his way out. You know that league sources told Adam Schefter before last Sunday's win over the Browns that Ryan is probably approaching his final games as a Bills coach and that Ryan knows what's going to happen. The Bills, of course, denied that report. And now you've got their GM, Doug Whaley, telling WGR 550 today, quote, "Let's put it this way. None of us know our future. Look where we are. We owe it to the fans and owners to keep it focused on Miami because we're still in this." Is that the absolute no vote of confidence or what? I mean, come on. I mean, if I'm Rex and I hear that, I already have the movers scheduled for January 2nd because I'm out of Buffalo.
Yeah, and rightfully so. You realize that after this season, if Rex Ryan's fired, that's the end for any Ryan to be a head coach in the NFL. This is the last stop, Jeff. There won't be any more opportunities for Rex Ryan. Even in this post-Rooney Rule era in the NFL, clearly Rex Ryan is a guy that's just going to be a coordinator and a head coach. You know why? Because he just can't go from one city to the other with that checkered jacket and those white shoes trying to sell himself and sell the franchise of winning a Super Bowl. That worked in Buffalo only for a short period of time. But if you come in, as you mentioned, with your tempered thoughts and saying, you know what, we're just going to continue to work hard and try to develop our quarterback and try to get a winner here in Buffalo, that's one thing. But you come in here with your fireworks and your checkered jacket and say, oh, this car is great. Watch this car. And he pulls the handle of the car and the door comes off. I mean, that's Rex Ryan as a head coach. Stop trying to sell everything. All you have to do is just coach and do the best job you can. It worked for Jeff Fisher and it worked for Gus Bradley. All they did was just talk about the team, but not Rex. No, jazz hands, big smile, all this nonsense. Brings his brother in. That didn't work. So I think that this will be the end for any Ryan with any opportunity for a head coaching job after this.
Unless they have children that we're unaware of that have aspirations to one day be coaches. Maybe they could get a job in 15 years or so. But, yeah, right now, this generation, it's not going to happen again. You don't come in guns blazing in the AFC East. I'm sorry. You don't come in guns blazing. You know what you do? You come in undercover. Like Adam Gase.
Yes.
Where was that? Was Adam Gase talking about these grandiose plans?
Mm-mm.
I mean, of course, whenever you take over and you have your first press conference, you make mention of we want to build this into a championship team. We want to build this into a contender. But he's not shooting off the fireworks. He's calm. He's cool. And look what happens now. He's got him at 9-5. And my guess is they'll be 10-5 after tomorrow. Now, I'm going to guess that Belichick probably wins Coach of the Year again, but I think Adam Gase should be under strong consideration for Coach of the Year. I covered him for one season in Chicago. It's too bad. I wish I had more time to cover this guy, but he was on to bigger and better things than John Fox. He is a really good coach, great concepts, tremendous with the quarterback, and just a guy that people like, they can relate to, players trust him. That was a really good hire in Miami. And, that's the difference on tomorrow with this game. If you're watching this game, you've got one coach there with the arrow going up and the other one with the arrow pointing down, and you know which one is which.
Well, I think with Gase, I think it's interesting. James Walker, who writes for the NFL Nation for the Miami Dolphins beat, told me that there's something to Gase. And you covered him too, so you can speak to this as well. It seems as though that whoever's the starting quarterback, whether it's Jay Cutler or if it's Tannehill, it always takes a little bit of a time for the quarterbacks to adjust to Gase, exactly what he wants. And that really tells a story because, remember, the Dolphins started off the season losing 4 of their last 5, but then they went on to a nice, long winning streak until Tannehill's injury. So it seems as though that once you start getting the rhythm of the Gase system, the quarterback seems comfortable. It helped Jay Cutler turn the corner last year, and same thing with Tannehill before the injury. So I don't think that Matt Moore is going to be the answer for the Dolphins moving forward, but I will say this, that at least you have someone in Gase that seems to have a rapport with the quarterback that's going to be with the Dolphins for quite some time in Tannehill.
And just think, if they ever do get a franchise passer in Miami, look out.
Mm-hmm.
Look out, because you've got the best possible, or one of the best possible guys working with him and developing him. He's been a great story again this year, and it's amazing to me that San Francisco, boy, you want to talk about a franchise that has just blundered everything since Harbaugh left? San Francisco could have hired Gase. They chose not to. They hired Jim Tomsula. They could have hired Vic Fangio. They chose not to. Mm-hmm. They hired Jim Tomsula. And then they hired Chip Kelly this year. So this guy had a chance to get several jobs before he had to be a coordinator again last year in Chicago, and now he's in Miami. And again, he's he's doing great things. And don't be surprised if they go to 10-5 tomorrow, and you'll hear the cries for Coach of the Year for Adam Gase, because I think he deserves it.
Yeah, Gase deserves to be in that conversation. So should Jason Garrett for the Cowboys, and so should Jack Del Rio, because the Raiders are a great story. Think about this Raiders team is going to get in their first playoff appearance since 2002. Give him a lot of credit, because it's not just his coaching, it's winning on the road. As you know more than anybody how difficult it is for teams to focus and to be able to win multiple games, especially early in the schedule on the road. That's what impressed me the most about the Raiders. Not just Carr, not just what they've been able to do, but just the idea that you're on the road and you're winning. That's not ever easy in this league, and the Raiders have mastered that.
Yeah, I mean, Malarkey's doing a good job in Tennessee. Cutter's doing a good job in Tampa. So lots of coaches have kind of turned programs around. So it will be interesting to see kind of who wins that award, but a lot of deserving candidates. This holiday season, deck the halls with elegant floral decorations from 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order the beautifully handcrafted holiday flower tree, you'll get 20% off. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Let's go around the NFL with Field Yates, our ESPN insider. He joins us coming up next. It's the right time. Bomani's off. It's Dickerson and Hood sitting in on ESPN Radio.
ESPN Radio Sports Center.
I'm Doug Brown. Oklahoma Sooners running back Joe Mixon held a news conference today to apologize for hitting a female student back in 2014. The video of that incident is now public. Mixon will play for the Sooners against Auburn in the Sugar Bowl. The Cavaliers will be without guard J.R. Smith for 12 to 14 weeks. He had surgery today for a complex fracture of his right thumb. Smith hopes to be back in time for the playoffs starting in April. The Cavaliers host the Nets tonight before their Christmas Day showdown with the Warriors. Jets running back Matt Forte held out of practice again today. He's doubtful for tomorrow's game with the Patriots with knee and shoulder injuries. The Cardinals put safety Tyrann Mathieu on injured reserve today, ending his season with a continuing shoulder injury. A bowl tripleheader on ESPN today. Right now about to kick in the Armed Forces Bowl. Number 25 Navy against Louisiana Tech. Just completed. Old Dominion beats Eastern Michigan 24-20. It was the Monarchs' first ever bowl game.
Want an easy way to see if you could save money on car insurance? Geico gives you 3. Call 1-800-947-AUTO. Go online to geico.com or stop by the Geico office nearest you. 3 ways you could save 15% or more.
Getting you ready for the holiday weekend. Dickerson and Hood sitting in for Bomani on the right time. It's ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Busy Saturday coming up in the NFL. So let's go out to our Shell Pennzoil Performance line. Welcome in ESPN NFL insider Field Yates, who joins us on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Field, happy holidays to you and your family, my friend. It's great to catch up again, and saw the news that Adrian Peterson is not going to play for the Vikings tomorrow against Green Bay. Bob Holtzman's hearing he might not play against Chicago in Week 17. So I wonder, have we seen the last of Adrian Peterson playing for the Vikings?
Yeah, JD, it's a fair question because you look at the construction of his contract, and beyond this season, it's a year-to-year proposition for the Vikings. And how many running backs, especially those that are in their early 30s, coming off of an injury-riddled year, are worth the north of $15 million salary that Adrian Peterson was going to, or is going to account for in 2017. Now, the team has some decisions to make at positions other than running back, most notably, of course, what happens at quarterback when Teddy Bridgewater is healthy at some point early next season. But from a roster construction standpoint, it's hard to carry a guy at that large of a number in Adrian Peterson, especially with some uncertainty surrounding his present and future given the current injury.
Phil, we saw the Giants lose against the Eagles yesterday, and I think one of the questions Jeff and I have been asking all season is, what is Giants football? What is it? Why are they 10-5 at this point? So, should they make the playoffs? What's their shelf life in the playoffs?
Well, the good news, defensively they're as good as there probably is in the NFC, maybe aside from Seattle, but Even Seattle has some room for improvement following the Earl Thomas injury. And I would say this, the Giants did not look good last night, most especially on offense, where they ran 89 plays and still mustered only 19 points. But it's going to take a very good effort to oust them in the playoffs because they're the only team that has beaten the best team in the NFC twice, and they've done so by limiting the Dallas Cowboys to a total of 26 points in 2 meetings. The Cowboys put up 26 points in a game most Sunday afternoon. So I think the Giants, although they are flawed and especially limited offensively, it's going to take a big-time effort for someone to bounce them in the playoffs. They certainly have the we've been there before mentality coupled with that excellent defense.
Field Yates with us on the right time. Dickerson and Hood in for Bomani on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We were talking about Rex Field, our last segment, and I read the Doug Whaley quotes from today. It certainly was a vote of no confidence if I've ever read one before. But here's what I wonder. They went 8-8 last year. He's got him at 7-7. Is there any school of thought out there that maybe it would be a little premature to launch him after just 2 seasons?
Heck yeah, there's a school of thought to that. I mean, it's only been 2 seasons, as you just mentioned. And if you look at the roster that Rex Ryan has coached, it's not one of those franchise rebuild rosters. Certainly it's not that, but it's also one that has blemishes of its own. I think the Bills would be smart to hold on to Rex Ryan if for no other reason than you can't keep expecting players to adapt defensively or offensively each and every season. I'm not saying that Rex Ryan has been A-plus across the board in his tenure with the Buffalo Bills. And certainly he hasn't done himself too many favors by making proclamations like his team is going to make the playoffs or they're going to be a Super Bowl contender, things like that. But Rex Ryan has been about average as an NFL head coach over 2 seasons. And if you're going to fire him, you better have a darn good plan in place to replace him with somebody that you think actually roster substantially better going into next season, because the indications are that even if Rex is let go, Doug Whaley is not presently on the hot seat, which you can probably have a healthy conversation if that deserves to be the case.
Tom Savage will get his opportunity to start for the Houston Texans. So, Field, what's the likelihood that he can lead? What are the good signs you see from Savage from the limited time we saw him in last week?
Well, here's the good news for Tom Savage is that he does not need to be great to help the Houston Texans to victory. He just needs to be maybe even below average, which I'm not saying the Texans would like that by any stretch, but we all know that Brock Osweiler was, I think there's a reasonable case to be made that he was the worst starting quarterback in football through the first 15 weeks of the season, at least amongst the quarterbacks that started every game for their team to this point. But the Texans just need Tom Savage to be, on a 1 to 10 scale, a 5 or so, in order for them to be competitive. I mean, they made it to 8-6. With Brock Osweiler playing the way that he did, and he really suffocated the offense. There was no vertical passing game whatsoever. DeAndre Hopkins looks like a shell of himself so far this season. Tom Savage at least has this going for him. Familiarity and the confidence of his head coach, because he was amongst the players that was handpicked by Bill O'Brien early on in his tenure with the Texans.
What do they do there, Field? Could they go back to Osweiler next year? Is that a possibility?
Listen, I'd say this. Right now, and we are so far away from that, obviously, but right. I can't imagine that Brock Osweiler would be the leader in the clubhouse to be the starter going into next season unless Tom Savage completely nosedives over the next couple of weeks. They miss the playoffs, and they feel as though, something, Brock Osweiler needs nothing more than a confidence boost that can be gained through an off season of work with his teammates and his coaches. But I would say this, the only thing that makes the situation sort of tenable going forward is that Tom Savage, if he does win the starting job, which probably can be done with a strong performance to close out 2016, he's not making much, at least in the scale or on the scale of NFL quarterbacks. So it is somewhat tenable to carry both Brock Osweiler as the backup and Tom Savage as the starter, because in aggregate, they're making about what a quarterback who starts and a quarterback who backs up makes on the average NFL roster.
Field, who would be your coach of the year for this season?
Well, I think, I sort of laugh at the idea. It's like, I think Bill Belichick's won the award like once or twice in his career. And part of me thinks, like, if we are giving the award to the best coach, it's pretty clearly Bill Belichick, and that's basically the case every single year. But I think Belichick, just because of the standard they've set, probably won't end up winning the coach of the year this year. So I think the vote probably would be angled towards someone like Jack Del Rio. His second year on the job in Oakland, they're 11-3 with a shot to maybe even earn the top overall seed in the AFC, he has been so good in terms of establishing the mindset and the confidence for Oakland. That team seems to be one that when the moment is at its biggest, he actually gets his team to play the best. There are a lot of good candidates this year, as I think there are any other year. We always go towards the teams with the best records, but a couple of, I would say, under-the-radar candidates. But how about the job that Jim Caldwell's done with the Lions? The only one of 6 teams that did not have a player elected to the Pro Bowl. And we can debate the merits of Pro Bowl selections, but the other teams didn't have a player picked to the Pro Bowl, or the likes of the Jaguars and the 49ers, and yet the Lions are 9-5 with an outside shot at still getting a first-round bye in the NFC playoffs.
And I thought, how about Adam Gase Field in Miami? I mean, they're 9-5, and they'll probably get to 10-5 tomorrow.
Yeah, no question. He'd be the other guy that has completely gotten his team to overachieve. And if we're giving out the Coach of the Year based off of players playing above their expected performance, Gase is certainly in the mix. I throw Mike Mularkey in that mix as well. He was not a popular choice amongst people who follow football to keep or to stay as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. But they're 8-6, and if you told me I had to pick one team to win the AFC South today, I'd go with the Tennessee Titans winning 10 games. That's no small accomplishment by Mike Mularkey a year after his team won just 2 games and had the first pick in the draft until they traded it to the LA Rams.
Thank you as always, Field. Enjoy your holiday weekend, okay?
Right back to you guys.
All right, Field Yates on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, and choose Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline for the best total engine protection you can get.
You know what? It's nothing wrong with that outside pick of Jim Caldwell. There's a guy that was good as fired in Detroit, and look how they've turned things around. And again, I don't believe necessarily in the Lions having a long time in the playoffs, because I just think that when you continue to come from behind, Jeff, in games, that's hard to do. That's very difficult to do. And so I can't necessarily buy into them as a viable contender in the playoffs. But Caldwell gets due. He deserves credit because there's an opportunity there for him to get fired.
Oh, there was a purge there last year in Detroit, and he somehow survived it, and they're at 9-5. But I do wonder about Matthew Stafford's finger, though, because that thing got messed up a couple of weeks ago against the Bears. The glove, 1 glove, 2 gloves, no glove. You're not Michael Jackson, bro, all right? You don't need a glove.
Or Gary Payton.
Yes, that's for sure. You don't need a glove, but he does have problems with that hand. So we'll see what they do against the Cowboys on Monday, and then they still got to play, I think, the Packers again in Week 17. So I wonder if the NFC North is going to come down to that final meeting in Week 17. Brandon Marshall probably done with the Jets, but is there a chance he resurfaces in New England? Let's discuss that coming up next. It's Dickerson and Hood. We're in for Bomani. This is the right time on ESPN Radio.
That'll be rich.
The Warriors-Cavaliers Christmas Day on ABC and ESPN Radio. Complete reaction Monday morning with Mike and Mike starting at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
This is the right time on ESPN Radio, ESPN app. Dickerson and Hood filling in for Bomani. All guests on our show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance line.
Man, those tunes sounding good, Jeff.
Oh, man.
I got new headphones. See these headphones, these Sonys? Mm-hmm. My first time I've got Sonys, my new headphones. I had the same ones for 12 years. I had to get rid of them. I had to put it away, but these headphones work with the music that we have. That bass is kicking in these new cans I've got. So
now that's the Bomani bounce.
Yes.
That is the Bomani bounce right there.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That is some good stuff.
Yeah.
I read this story, interesting New York Daily News. Manish Mehta, who covers the Jets, columnist, raises the idea of Brandon Marshall, who I spent a couple years with in Chicago, maybe playing for the Patriots next season. On the surface, you might say, well, I don't think New England wants to go down that road. But on second thought, I also covered Martellus Bennett, and he was not easy to deal with in the locker room with the team. However, he has done a fabulous job assimilating to that culture there, and they take in a lot of, kind of questionable football character type guys. I'm just trying to be, politically correct here.
Yes, a wayward boys' home.
Yes,
is that what you're saying?
And I guess unless you break the law, or commit, heinous acts like one of their former players did. I wonder if that place is just so protected and so insulated and run so efficiently by Belichick that they can handle anybody. Because I think Marshall can still play. It's never been that Brandon can't play. He is a great player, great physical skills. But it's not a coincidence that he's never been to the playoffs. I'm sorry. He's just one of those guys that kind of wears out his welcome everywhere he goes. But if he's going there just for the end, and he told Manish, that's intriguing. That wouldn't be my team. I would be a rental player. Actually, if he wants to chase a ring before it's all said and done, that's probably the best he can do.
Now, let me see. 6 Pro Bowls for Brandon Marshall, right? When you go to ProFootballReference.com, which is, it's one of my favorite websites, because when you go to that website, you find out exactly what a player is versus other players of his ilk based on numbers. So at this point in time, Brandon Marshall's career is linked to Chris Collinsworth, Calvin Johnson, Lavernius Coles, Mark Clayton, Plaxico Burress, to name a few. The only Hall of Famer on here is John Stallworth that he's linked to as far as his numbers. So at age 32, about to be 33, Jeff, I think that would be a great spot for him. It would be the only time where he was quiet. It would be the only place, because he wasn't quiet in Denver or Miami or Chicago, or definitely not with the Jets. But it seems like everywhere he goes, it's a losing situation, and maybe he's just frustrated by it. But if he goes to the Patriots, we won't hear anything from Brandon Marshall. He'll just be pretty much playing the game that we know he can play when he's healthy.
I don't know if they would want him. I think what New England should do is sign Alshon Jeffrey. That's my opinion.
Well,
I think that's a winning combination with him out there. I don't know if they would want Marshall, but if he wants to actually win, there's no better place to go. And I don't know if Belichick would let him still do his, inside the NFL gig on Tuesdays. That's probably out the window, so he has to kind of weigh that when he makes his decision, if that's even an option. But the guy can play. It's just, you can't get him in one spot for more than a couple of years because he has a shelf life, and it's worn off in New York. It wore off in a bad way in Chicago, wore off in a horrible way in Miami, wore off in a terrible way in Denver. I mean, there have been no happy endings as far as with teams for Marshall. That's just, I don't know. There's something about him. It doesn't work out.
I just think that when you look at his numbers, those numbers don't really tell the true story of what he could provide for a team. He's got 57 catches, tied for 45th, 760 receiving yards. That's 38th. I mean, he's much better than that. But going to a good landing, a good strong landing like the Patriots, that could help his career. But if he goes to a team that can't win, he's going to mouth off, and he's going to be unhappy, and he's going to try to lead a new team that he knows nothing about, and that's just not going to work.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you got to take into consideration when you bring him on the team. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, comparing rates to help you save. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today and find out how much Progressive could save you. All right, coming up next, Jonathan, let's hear from Oklahoma running back Joe Mixon. He apologized today for punching the female student in the face in 2014. That's next. Dickerson and Hood, we're in for Bomani.
College football lives here. After starting 1-2, Oklahoma ended the season as one of the nation's hottest teams, winning 9 straight. Now they face their first SEC opponent of the season, number 14 Auburn.
They're not going to catch them. 75 yards, touchdown Sooners.
The All-State Sugar Bowl. Coverage begins Monday, January 2nd at 8:30 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio. College football lives here. When the season began, both Michigan and Florida State had their sights set on a trip to the playoff.
Over the middle, diving catch, touchdown Michigan!
Now they go head-to-head in one of the most compelling bowl games this season.
It's a tip, and a catch, and a touchdown! Oh, my goodness!
The Capital One Orange Bowl. Coverage begins Friday, December 30th at 8 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio. Number 1 Alabama faces 4th-ranked Washington, followed by number 2 Clemson versus 3rd-ranked Ohio State. The College Football Playoff, New Year's Eve at 2 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.